Hi, this is Kelly Hill, technology reporter from RCR Wireless News. I'm here at Super Mobility Week in the Spirent booth with Saul, and I'm hoping that you can tell us a little bit about some of the announcements that you guys are making this week.
Thanks, Kelly. So we've been talking with customers over the last 18 months or so about testing in the wireless space, and we keep hearing three things very consistently. One is that the test equipment today is pretty big. It's expensive, it's hard to move around, and as a result, testing tends to be, the most effort on testing is very late in the cycle. And what customers are telling us is they want smaller, lighter weight, less expensive gear so that they can push testing earlier in the cycle, because of course when we find problems earlier, it's much less expensive. The second problem that we're learning about over the last year or so is VoLTE is really different. It isn't just the next technology of wireless. Unlike every previous generation, VoLTE requires device to device in order to work. In the past, when you'd connect your cell phone to the network, once it worked, you were good to go. But now with VoLTE, my cell phone has to negotiate with your cell phone just to get a voice call to operate. And so we're seeing problems now creeping into the field in the early VoLTE testing that traditionally would have been caught earlier in the lab. So device to device testing methodology has to really come into the ecosystem now. And lastly, we're seeing many new entrants come into the wireless ecosystem that aren't necessarily wireless experts. Folks who are building connected car infotainment systems and agricultural tracking systems and whatnot, they're not wireless experts, nor should they necessarily have to be wireless experts. So testing equipment has to allow them to test at the application level that they're familiar with and prove in all of the different scenarios without burdening them with lower level complexity. So what we've announced today is the Spirent Elevate test framework. And what the test framework does is fundamentally changes the way the approach to testing. Instead of this box model with all the technology crammed into a box and all the software crammed into the box, we've separated software from hardware, virtualized the software, and that allows us to create a network of test elements approach. So I can take pieces of hardware where I need it and replicate them much less expensively, and I can share the software modules across the entire test network. And by doing that, I'm able to reduce the cost of testing, make it much easier to push testing earlier in the cycle. I'm able to support device to device and many multi-device test cases. And we also simplify and hide lower level complexity for application developers and show them the application layer that they're working on so they can see device 1 talking to device 2 without getting caught up in a lot of lower level complexity. So that's the big announcement, the Spirent Elevate test framework. And then we've also simultaneously announced a specific testing solution around VoLTE RCS, which is the first application of the test framework, which incorporates the ProLab, RadVision ProLab is now part of the Spirent family, and a new wireless test station, which is this really cool, small, multi-device test station that makes it easier to implement these more cost-effective test cases.
So let's talk a little bit about some of the market trends that are driving the products that you guys announced.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously VoLTE is getting a lot of attention and a lot of effort invested in it right now.
Yep.
And I'm wondering, can you tell us a little bit about, more about what you're hearing, about what some of the challenges are, and how you guys are trying to address those?
So we've definitely seen this device-to-device issue as the biggest challenge for VoLTE device testing. We see that when you take a VoLTE device and you test it against maybe a software user agent, everything can be fine. Like we've seen cases where we'll take a device that's near the end of the development cycle, so it's effectively just about done, and you test it in a normal fashion, and the video call is great. And then you take that exact same device 5 minutes later, and you test it with another device, and the video doesn't work. Like, what's going on there? Oh, well, in the first case, it was doing loopback video, so it knew what its codec was, and it negotiated just fine with itself. But now with VoLTE, that phone needs to interoperate with every other version of that phone, and it needs to interoperate with every other model from that manufacturer, and it needs to interoperate with every other manufacturer's phone. Every one of those cases is going to happen in the field, and they're going to happen a lot, and they're going to happen on this carrier and on that carrier, and roaming and all that has to work all the time. And that's really critical for the industry, because the industry really needs VoLTE voice quality to work really well for us all to adopt VoLTE. And once we do, all sorts of great things happen in the industry, right? We get to go all digital, it's an all IP network, and reclaim bandwidth, and we get to implement these really cool mobile-to-mobile features and connected car features like multiple profiles. All sorts of good stuff can happen, but VoLTE first has to work really well so the customer adoption is high.
And RCS has to work as well.
Yes, it sure does. RCS brings more benefits in terms of being able to provide presence indication, and again, these are device to server, and in some cases, the device to device negotiation that has to happen.
Great. Well, Saul, thank you so much for taking the time to tell us about your news this week.
Thanks, Kelly. It's been a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
And that's it.